Hello, class. Welcome back to Play Analysis and Interpretation, Thea 331. This is lessons 5 to 6. Today, we're looking at characters in relation to 6 characters in search of an author by Luigi Pirandello. Now, let's just begin with a synopsis of this interesting play. I'm sure you've really enjoyed reading it. Um, so the play is about a theater company that prepares and begins rehearsal for another play, only to be interrupted by a group of 6 characters searching for an author to write their story so they can appear on stage. They persuade the manager to give them a chance to perform their story and are apprehensive about being played by any of the actors of the company since they have appeared as themselves already. Their tragedy, which is burning inside each of them, is real to them because they are characters. And as soon as they begin to present their story for the manager, to shape it into a script, they relive the experience in real time. The story is revealed that the father, though married to the mother, forced her to leave her newborn baby boy and go away with his clerk because he, the father, believed that it would make her happy as they seemed so fond of each other. Now, estranged from him, she and the clerk go away to start a new family. Years later, the clerk dies and the family return to town without the knowledge of the father. Facing hardship, the stepdaughter is lured into Madame Pachet's brothel and she nearly serves her own stepfather, but for the intervention of the mother. He then moves them into his home where the mother and her children are rejected by the supposed abandoned son. The misery of their lives in his home lead to the drowning of the child, the suicide of the boy, and the disappearance of the stepdaughter, leaving the mother in great sorrow. The manager is left furious at how he has wasted a whole day on the characters. Now, the time of composition of the play was 1921, but it was extensively revised in 1925. And the time of action is daytime. It all happened within the day. The dramatic time is a day, and we can see it in what the manager says. I've lost a whole day over these people. A whole day. Now, in terms of the structure, there are 3 acts with no scene divisions. Act 1 begins with the company arriving for the day's rehearsal of another Pirandello play, mixing it up. It ends when the manager gives the actors a 20 minutes break to discuss the first act with the characters. Act 2 begins with the stepdaughter explaining the comedy they are about to play to the child and ends when the machinists accidentally let the curtain down. It also signals the ending of Act 1 of the character's story. Act 3 begins with the second act of the character's story and ends with the deaths of the child and boy and the disappearance of the stepdaughter. Now, this play is meta-theatrical, and it is meta-theatrical because it is a play about theater. It is a play about playmaking itself. And so there is role play and there is a play within a play. The play that they were rehearsing before the characters interrupted them, mixing it up, was actually part of their lives as a theater company. That's what they do. And it actually happens within a theater space where they had gathered to rehearse and prepare for their performances as a theater company. And so it comments on the processes of theater making where they talk about set construction, they talk about makeup, they talk about curtains falling and rising and all that. And so you can also see this commentary on the process of theater making in what the stepdaughter tells the little child about the stage. She said, "It's a place, baby, where people play at being serious, a place where they act comedies. We've got to act a comedy now, dead serious. And you are in it also, little one. It's all make believe here." So, this is what makes it meta theatrical, the fact that it comments and reveals the processes of playmaking itself in the theater. So, what is character? In our journey through this play analysis course, we're looking at dissecting a play into its component parts. And we have looked at the given circumstances that helps you to understand the world of the play. And then we moved on to plot. Now we are moving on to character according to the hierarchy that Aristotle had given. So, what is character? Now we are on character. Character is described as the pattern of action that identifies a person. What Aristotle called habitual action. Action that is acquired by habit or use. Something you do, something you repeatedly do is a pattern of action. And so that is why you are able to say, this person has a very bad character. It means that you have identified something that the person does habitually, which is not good. And so you are able to say this person has a good character or a bad character. In drama, character is not something that is static or fixed forever, but rather a consistent pattern of actions that is associated with a particular figure in a play, a person. So these figures are called characters. Characters are persons within the dramatic action because they represent or present a consistent pattern of actions that can be associated with them. Dramatic characters are different from real people. I know you know this, but then you see how this plays out in 6 characters in search of an author. They may be embodied by real people, like the actors in the play, perform actions similar to those of real people, and have emotional lives similar to those of real people. But it all ends there. Unlike people, characters are very predictable. You can predict what that character is going to do based on the pattern of actions of the character. But you cannot predict real people easily. You may think you know them, but they could end up surprising you. It is not common for people to focus on a single idea that overpowers them. It's like that is all they are focusing on, that is all they want. And they wouldn't do anything else with their lives but just that. Characters can do that. And you can see that in the stepdaughter's actions. The way she just wants to enact that scene, just that scene alone, so that she can shame the father. That is her goal. That is all. If it's a real human being, there would be other parts of that person's life that would interest that person. That person may have other goals apart from that one. But for characters, they have a focus, a single focus that drives their goal in the play. But you see, this is created for dramatic reasons. Because unlike human beings with complex characteristics and all that, in drama you have to make everything compact so that you can begin and end. Imagine a play that goes on forever because we're exploring the complexities of characters. It just doesn't work that way with the format. When you are creating a play, you need to be able to give characters certain human characteristics and all that, but then their goal has to be very single so that at the end of the day, they either achieve it or not, and it ends the drama. And so to portray character, the whole array of ordinary human behavior is compressed into a few selected pre-programmed features. That is why characters can be predictable. And in any play, you will find that, these you will find very clear goals for a character. And so by the end of it, it can appear very clear whether the character has achieved that goal or not. And sometimes we fear for the character, especially when the goal is tied to that character's life and all that. So it is very important that in drama everything is condensed. Within this particular play, Six Characters in Search of an Author, there are two levels of characters in the play. The theater company has its own characters. That is the manager, the leading lady, leading man, l'ingénieur, juvenile lead, property man, prompter, machinist, managers, secretary, etc. And then we have the characters of the comedy in the making. That is the six characters: the father, the mother, the stepdaughter, the boy, the child, the son, and Madame Pache. So these are the two levels of characters within Six Characters in Search of an Author. And these characters confront each other, even though within the outer world of the play, you have those characters of the company being the actors. And then the characters who come as characters come as characters. So they tried to create a separation between these two levels of characters, where the actors see themselves as actors, as real people, whilst the characters see themselves as characters. And so here we hear the father saying, "Are you not accustomed to see the characters created by an author spring to life in yourselves and face each other? Well, this is the work of actors. This is what they do. Just because there is no book which contains us, you refuse to believe." And the father is surprised here because these actors confront characters all the time, but they embody them and they find them in books, that is the plays that have been written. And so it is very strange to see characters standing before them and speaking to them. And so the father tells them, this further explains the difference between the actors and the characters. We act the role for which we have been cast, the role which we have been given in life. Now, unlike the actors who can change roles, they can pick a character's role and then tomorrow change into a different character. The characters are fixed. They cannot change their roles. We act the role for which we have been cast. They are fixed forever. The role which we have been given in life. And you can see also how the manager refuses to understand the fact that these characters have appeared as characters rather than be contained in a play, in a book, for the actors to embody them. He says, "All right, characters then, if you insist on calling yourselves such. But here, my dear sir, the characters don't act. Here the actors do the acting. The characters are there in the book, when there is a book." The father said, "I won't contradict you, but excuse me. The actors aren't the characters. They want to be, they pretend to be, don't they? Now, if these gentlemen here are fortunate enough to have us alive before them." This was said when the father and the other characters, especially the stepdaughter, were trying to convince the company to allow them to act as themselves. And they said no, because in the theater it is actors that embody characters and portray them on stage, not characters themselves. And so this created a confrontation between the father and the leading man, because the father could not see himself in the leading man, And the stepdaughter also could not see herself in the leading lady. Now, the characters talk about how they came to be. The author who created us alive no longer wished or was no longer able materially to put us into a work of art. And this was a real crime, sir, because he who has had the luck to be born a character can laugh even at death. He cannot die. The man or woman, the writer, the instrument of the creation will die, but his creation does not die. And this is very true. Shakespeare's works are being studied still. He is dead and gone. Even Pirandello, as we are studying his work, is dead. But his play, Six Characters in Search of an Author, still lives with us. And even though he has stated this truth in his work, I'm sure he has seen this happening, a time coming when he would not be alive, but then his play would be alive. And we are living in this time. And so you can see the stepdaughter and the leading lady having a confrontation. She's like, but I wasn't speaking of you, you know. I was speaking of myself, whom I cannot see at all in you. That is all. I don't know, but aren't in the least like me. You aren't in the least like me. And so she just does not understand. She cannot bring herself to think that the leading lady can become her because she's not her. And that is the whole point of acting. You don't present the character as the character is. You present your own understanding, a version of who you think the character is. The father and the leading man also go at it. The father said, exactly, it will be difficult to act me as I really am. The effects will be rather, apart from the makeup, according as to how he supposes I am. As he sees me, if he does sense me, and not as I inside of myself feel myself to be. It seems to me then that account should be taken of this by everyone whose duty it may become to criticize us. And so this clearly points to the friction between characters and actors. Before an actor embodies a character, the actor tries to research the character, look at the sociocultural milieu within which the character existed and all that, and tries to portray that character. But that actor can never become that character. And so in searching for the features of a character, when you are reading a play, it can become overwhelming to be able to see characters in all their dimensions, because at any given point in time, you're reading just a certain portion of the play. And so how do you keep up? How do you have a profile of a character in all his or her dimension? It helps to go at it layer by layer. And then all these layers stack up together to give you an accurate profile of the characters within the play. And so we'll be looking at 8 features of characters. One is objectives. Objectives equip the characters with goals. Each of us has objectives, even daily ones. When you wake up in the morning, you have an objective. I'm going out to do this, that, and then I'll do that, and then I'll do that, and then that's it. And so actions are what the characters actually do to pursue those goals. If your objective is to go for lectures, you get up and you take the action of actually walking out of your room, preparing, walking out of your room and going. That's action. And then conflict describes the tensions within and between characters. So what if there's tension within you? oh, this lecturer, I don't like this lecturer's classes, so I don't want to go. That's internal. And so you're trying to contemplate going and not going. And then you may have another conflict that is external. Let's just say that you find out that a swarm of bees have invaded the corridor that leads to where you are supposed to pass to go for the lectures. Now, that's a real physical conflict there. It is between you and the bees. How do you get past it? And so on. 4. Willpower. Willpower is the force characters use to pursue their goals. What are you going to do? Are you going to get a smoking wood to scare them off so you pass? Do you still have, like, do you feel a strong desire to pursue that goal? It depends. Your willpower will depend on how much you want to achieve that goal. 5 is values. They are the intangible things that characters consider good and bad. Each of us have values. There are certain things we will not do because it goes against our beliefs. There are certain things we will do because we think it is good. All these determine what we see as good or bad. And then there are personality traits. These are those strokes of individuality that show how characters look, feel, and think. And then we have complexity. Complexity is the degree of self-awareness in a character. There are some times where you are in a situation and you don't even understand, you don't see your relationship to the situation. It shows how you are not very much aware of that kind of relationship to your environment, for instance. But then when you have great complexity, it means that you are very aware of yourself and your environment as a character. And that level of complexity is very important, especially in a main character. Now, relationships are the 8th one. They are the primary and secondary associations among characters. It is through characters' relationships that we actually get to see them in their fullness. So now we'll begin with objectives. Objectives. There are so many ways that analysts describe them, or theater makers describe objectives. Some just call them objectives because they are goals. Others tasks. Others problem. Still others call them spine or intention. What is your intention? What are your objectives? So what a character's efforts or actions are intended to attain or accomplish. That is what a character wants, whether for a scene or for an entire play. So what a character wants. So whatever actions and efforts that you put into whatever it is you're doing, there is an outcome that you want. Those outcomes are your objectives or the character's objectives. Now, these objectives are divided into super and minor objectives. The super objectives are a character's objectives that are bigger, the overall objectives. So a character's super objective is what he or she seeks to accomplish in the entire play. And so if you take it out of play into somebody's life, it will be what a person wants to accomplish in his or her entire life. So this can be gleaned from what the character says he or she wants. A successful super objective should logically relate to the main idea of the play. Because if this is what is driving the character, it means that it is linked to the central idea. And I have said before that a character's single overpowering goal drives him or her towards his or her destination, which then determines whatever actions he or she takes from the very beginning right to the end. And at the end of it all, we will get to see what the whole idea is about. And so a successful super objective should logically relate to the main idea of the play. Minor objectives are just what the name suggests, minor. So to accomplish the super objectives, the character must break it up into more manageable pieces, the minor objectives. When you want to analyze a play, for instance, you don't just analyze the play as a whole, you break it down. Your main objective is to analyze the play, but you break it down into minor objectives where you are looking at, okay, given circumstances, you are looking at plot, you are looking at characters, and so on. And so the minor objectives must follow from the super objective. They are often directed at specific characters and not at the general environment. So you will find these minor objectives within scenes because the character is pushing. Okay, this is what I want, but I'll first do this, and then next I'll do that. I'll try to influence this person to do that, and all that. And so in 6 characters in search of an author, what is each character's super objective? What are the minor objectives for each scene, unit, and beat? Now, 6 characters in search of an author is not your typical play because the main drama itself happened in the past. It is not within the plot. All the characters' super objectives is to have an opportunity to live through the actors and dramatize their lives. And so the father says, the drama is in us and we are the drama. We are impatient to play it. Our inner passion drives us onto this. Their single overpowering drive is to live through the actors or live their story. Just that's it. We want to live only for a moment in you. That is all they want. And so the stepdaughter's drive is actually revenge. As you can see in her statement, she said, shame indeed. When the mother said shame unto her, she said, shame indeed. This is my revenge. I am dying to live that scene. I am dying to live that scene. That is her objective for just that, for the entire play. She wants to live that scene because it is her revenge. She knows the father doesn't want that scene to be lived, to be played. And she wants to spite him. She wants him to feel so remorseful over and over and over. That is what she does to him because they are characters. It doesn't end. And the mother's objective is to convince the son that if she abandoned him, it was because the father forced her to. And the manager's super objective is to rehearse a play with his company for a waiting audience. So we move on to action. So from objective, we have moved on to action. Objectives are what a character wants, and actions are what the character does to get it. Furthermore, since action is a process of forcing, it is always directed toward another character. So I like the way Francis Hodge explains it. He says character A forces character B. B receives the forcing and adjusts to it, and then B forces A. A receives the forcing and adjusts to it, and then A forces B, etc., until the event is interrupted, delayed, or resolved either by A or B, getting the better of the other, or else by a deadlock. You can see this happening in 6 characters in search of an author, where the characters come and impose their will on the manager, and then they force him to begin to listen because they immediately started dramatizing. And so he finds it interesting. And then now he receives it, adjusts to it, and then goes like, okay, let's hear you out. Now let's work on this. And then now he forces them to take on the way the theater operates. He tells them you cannot appear as yourselves. you are going to be played by these actors, and then they receive the force and adjust to it, and then they go like, no, this person cannot play me and all that. And then now they adjust to it again. He insists, they adjust to it again, and they say, okay, we will allow them to play us and all that. And then they go back and forth, back and forth. At the end of the day, the characters win because they got what they wanted. The manager lost a whole day, but they were able to play their drama. Each and every progression in a play is supposed to force someone to do something to someone else, and this forcing is called action. So objectives should be defined beforehand. When you know the objectives of the characters, then the actions are purpose driven instead of just being arbitrary, actions or choices that characters make. When you define the objectives beforehand, then you know why the characters do what they do. Now, conflict, as you all know, is a battle, quarrel, or struggle for supremacy between opposing forces. Instead of being a single narrow concept, conflict actually appears in several different forms. There may be conflict between one character and another, between character and environment, between character and destiny or the forces of nature, between character and ideas, or even among the feelings within a character. So, in terms of pushing the story forward or the plot forward, conflict must be more than intellectual. That is, battle of ideas within a character or between characters. It must be tangible and possess a human face. In other words, it must involve the behavior and emotions of other characters. This kind of conflict stems from specific conditions in the given circumstances and is grounded concretely in the world of the play. So in this sense, conflict that is not just in somebody's head in terms of battle between ideologies. In this concrete sense, you can see conflict happening in two ways. That is, or two forms: role conflicts and conflicts of objectives. Now, role conflicts stem from the characters' opposing views of each other, and conflicts of objectives stem from their opposing goals. And so you want this person doesn't want that, and so it creates conflicts. And so when you have role conflicts and conflicts of objectives, they are all parts of the character's outer selves, shaping the way the characters relate to each other externally. And this is what drives the plot forward. Because if the conflict is outside of yourself and it is external, it means it is directed at somebody. And so it pushes the plot forward and makes it more interesting. A role conflict or self-image conflict is a second type of conflict from the objective conflict. And we all play many roles in life. That is, right now you are students, you are somebody's son, you are a brother. So parent, teacher, son, daughter, employee, etc. And it is not difficult to see how this sense of the word role is related to the meaning, right? Because role conflicts often arise from characters' opposing images of themselves and each other. They come from conditions in the given circumstances that cause one character's self-image to come into an open disagreement with another's self-image. Just as with conflicts of objectives, there may be a number of different role conflicts among the characters throughout the play, each one defined by its own conditions in the given circumstances. For instance, you can see Mother Courage's role as a mother creating a role conflict, especially when they brought A-leaf, when they brought Swiss cheese for her to identify. Now, should she be a mother and claim him as her own, or should she be somebody, a woman who is there to survive in this war? So it created a conflict there for her. Because at the same time, also, you can also say that she was fighting for the survival of Catherine. But we cannot really rely on that explanation because at the end of the day, we saw clearly that she was interested in something else. Now, in six characters, there's a role conflict between characters and actors. And you can see clearly how characters wanted to perform themselves, play their role as characters. And the actors also assume a role of a professional kind. That is, we as actors, we play characters. And so this created a conflict between the two characters. And also you can see how in the role of the father, as a father, was conflicting with his desires as a man, because he was supposed to be a father to the stepdaughter, but because he didn't know she was the one, that particular role became a conflicting role, because he's not supposed to be in that situation with his own daughter. And so that created the conflict that currently exists between the two of them in the play. Now, another aspect of the eight um, areas of character exploration is willpower. The term will is defined as a strong wish, a firm intention, a power of choosing, a determination to do, and an inner force used to undertake conscious, purposeful action. Now, the key words here are power, firmness, determination, and force. Will is associated with strength, determination, and power because it takes characters with strong will to create conflict, to make things happen. You can see somebody like Torvald. He has a very strong will and he wills it over everybody and he's not willing to budge. That is what further created the conflict. Imagine if when Nora had asked him to retain Krogstad, he didn't have that firm will and he had said, okay. The conflict wouldn't have continued, would it? Sometimes these kinds of characters are called driving characters because they control the action of the play so strongly. Strong-willed characters are identified by their determination to impose their wills on everyone despite the outcome. And you can see this clearly in Torvald Helmer. And also in Six Characters in Search of an Author, you see this with the father. When he comes in, he just wanted to be given an opportunity to play their roles. And so he forces himself on the characters by going through long debates and monologues with the manager and all that. And then you can find that also with the stepdaughter. She has a very strong will, pushing her ideas, pushing what she wants. All she wants is to be able to play her role and humiliate the father. And that is all she wants to do. The other element is values. Values are the ideals the characters stand for or against in the world of the play. These are intangibles that form the ideas about good and bad, right and wrong. To achieve their objectives, characters embrace values that gratify them and they reject or at least struggle against those that do not do so. So values guide characters on the path of where they wish to go. They affect their personal, family, and social lives, their work, and their leisure. And so when you look at what Helmer does in A Doll's House, for instance, based on his values about what is good and what is right, he doesn't want to associate with somebody like Krogstad. And it even went against his own family. It affected his own family and personal relationship with Nora because he saw his values as supreme and paramount over everything else. These values define um, their reasons for choosing to be who they are. Values arise from personal beliefs about such things as conscience, public and family mindedness, ambition, success, and pleasure. And so, in some characters, the values may form a pattern of virtues, in others, they may be vices, and in still others, a mixture of virtues and vices. The deciding factor is whether the values are real, honest convictions, or short term tactics adopted for short term ends. That is why it is very important to assess characters holistically. Because in one scene, a character can say, "Oh, I am not a liar." In another scene, you will find him or her lying. And so it is very important that you assess the characters holistically across the entire play to determine if this person is honest or not, or just trying to deceive somebody in a moment in order to get what him or she wants. The father, for instance, talks about consciences in his discussions about why the stepdaughter has held on to just that one mistake to crucify him. Because he believes that human beings have various consciences they share with so many people, and so they should not be held, they should not be hanged because of just one mistake, like the one he nearly made at Madame Pachet's parlor. The stepdaughter said that at the time she was narrating how the story was going to go and the fact that she would leave in the end because she couldn't live in a society with such tainted character. She also talks about how when they were sleeping in the father's house, the little girl or the child was sleeping next to her and she didn't like the fact that the child held on to her because she feels filthy. So she also has values. She knows what is right and what is wrong, and she has seen that she has turned to be what not quite what society expects of a decent young lady, and so she would rather leave that particular society and not live there. Nora's idea of what is right is not right in the eyes of the law in a doll's house, because she believes that a woman should be able to adopt all means to save her family. But in the eyes of both her husband and the law, it is not right. But she is willing to question those beliefs. She is willing to even question religious beliefs because now she wants to know them for herself. She doesn't understand why certain things should be the way they are. She's clearly in conflict now with the way society operates because clearly she has different values from what society has. And like I mentioned before, Torvald has his own values. He speaks very ill of Krogstad because he believes that Krogstad is not a very decent human being. He believes in honesty. He doesn't lie and all that. So those values he cherishes. And you can see how he hated Nora for going against those values because he saw how she had been lying to him and even forging a signature. Even though it was on his behalf, he didn't care. In his eyes, they were wrong. Now, another element of character is personality traits. Personality is the manner in which a character is perceived by others, the way he relates to others. And personality has certain definable features called personality traits that identify outward appearance and behaviors. Personality traits may change in a character depending on the situation, but there is nevertheless a pattern that shows up under a variety of circumstances. This pattern allows for the collection of a personality profile. It controls how the character looks, sits, stands, walks, gestures, whether the person is crooked, the way the person speaks and behaves with other characters. Now, in order to identify these personality traits, first you have to list all the traits that the character shows in the play. Next, reduce the list to a manageable size by combining related traits and identifying those of central importance. The result will be a very short profile of personality traits. The most challenging part of the task, however, will be how to recognize personality from what characters say and do. Because, like I said before, a character can say something or do something, but then it doesn't show entirely how the character is. And so you have to look at it holistically. But mostly the truth of a character resides in what the person does. And so you should look out for what they say and what they do. Even though you cannot trust what they say so much, because they will be saying it just to gain favors within a particular scene. So you have to look at it holistically. So if in scene 1 the person says, "Oh, I'm honest," scene 2 the person does otherwise, you know the person is dishonest. So examples of character traits may be when characters are described as generous, gracious, considerate, intelligent, excitable, sentimental, spoiled, self-centered, bitter, naive, insecure, kind, scholarly, etc. So this is the kind of face that the person shares with the world and others. So sometimes too you will find this in the description of the playwright. In the description given of characters by the playwright. The stepdaughter, for instance, is described as dashing, almost impudent, beautiful. She wears mourning. This is in terms of her outward look, the clothes she's wearing. But she's described as elegant. She wears that mourning clothes with elegance. And then also in her relationship with the others, she is described as showing contempt for the timid, half-frightened manner of the boy. On the other hand, she displays a lively tenderness for her little sister, the child. So she has that ability to show tenderness, but she shows contempt for the little boy. And then she's also, in terms of her relationship with the father, in line 98, she is described as disdainful, alluring, treacherous, full of impudence. And then she breaks out into a loud laugh. Now, the loud laugh is also something that's part of her personality, because on countless occasions she'd been asked to stop that kind of laughing. And then let's look at complexity. Complexity. This is very important, especially for main characters. Complexity is the capacity for self-knowledge. Complexity is governed by what characters respond to in their world, and more important, how they respond, whether ignorant, apathetic, and compliant, or perceptive, intense, self-conscious, etc. The most complex character, the more three-dimensional. So if you have complex characters, it means that they are more three-dimensional than one-dimensional. So it means that they have the capacity to know themselves. They have the capacity to look even beyond themselves and see how their environment affects them, and have an opinion about it and take action about it. The other characters who are not very complex are arranged around such a character in different levels of complexity, depending on their capacity for self-knowledge. And so the way the playwright arranges this, it is to make the main characters more prominent. The main characters to understand the limitations of their environment and themselves and act accordingly, to have a broader view of self-knowledge to know what it is they are doing and take action so that they are not victims of their environment. And you can see this happening with the father. The father is the most complex of the characters in Six Characters in Search of an Author. He and the manager as well. So you have normally those who are least self-conscious or self-aware are called types, caricatures. They are one-dimensional because they display a single mental state, feeling, or action throughout the play. That is it. And you can see it in the mother. You can see it in the son. Those are one-dimensional characters. The mother just shows sorrow. The son shows contempt for all of them. And that's it. The stepdaughter, she has some form of complexity because she's able to even look beyond herself and have different levels of feelings towards the 14-year-old and the 4-year-old. And she's able to even talk about the fact that she had wished he had actually killed the father and the son rather than killing himself, you see. And so amongst the characters, the stepdaughter and the father have more complexity, even though the father has the most complexity because he is self-aware. He knows. He's even able to look at their situation and go like, I don't think this woman is happy with me. It looks like she's more comfortable with this clerk guy who is of the same class as herself. And I think she will be happy doing that, you know. And also for him to talk about the different consciences and how he should not be held prisoner because he has made a mistake. One mistake. It shouldn't color the entirety of his life. Another character who is not a type like the others is the manager, who is also very self-aware about even the types of plays they are performing as a theater company. And he knows what the audience wants, and he also knows that the kinds of plays they now have, which is the mixing it up, is not very good. And so he complains about it rather than just allow them to perform the plays and say, I don't know what is going on. He has explanations for that. So he's self-aware. This is what makes him complex. And so the one-dimensional characters, they show very minimum capacity for self-awareness. They reveal very little about themselves apart from the narrow limitations of their type. That is their single mental state, feeling, or action. So you see this in the mother and the son. They are one-dimensional. And you see it also in the 14-year-old. You see it in the child as well. And then we have the intermediate level characters. So they have some form of self-awareness than the one-dimensional characters, but they are not entirely aware of themselves or their world as they might be. And so when you read Death of a Salesman, you see it. You see these two characters, Linda and Happy Lowman. They reveal a certain sense of self-awareness, but they are not really self-aware. They don't really understand their situation. And you can see this also in the stepdaughter, even though she's intermediate in terms of her self-awareness, she's not very self-aware because she has limited everything to that single event that has happened. And that is all she wants to focus on, rather than looking at the broader issues, like the way the father sees it. And so self-awareness is the level, shows the level of complexity of a character. Because as you live as a human being, you should be able to understand how your environment affects you. And then you make decisions in relation to that, rather than allow everything to happen to you and not be aware of what is going on. So when you see characters who are self-aware about what is going on around them, and they question the status quo, then you see that, oh, this character is complex. They don't just behave like types. And so, in Six Characters in Search of an Author, I spoke about the father being more complex than the characters, and then the manager is also more complex than the other actors. Relationship is another element of character because characters do not exist on their own. When you look at us here in society, we live in relationship to others. And so the focal point of dramatic interest in a play is the conflict between the main character and his or her chief opponent, and that's a form of relationship. So, as Aristotle has called these two major forms of relationship, we have the protagonist, which is for the argument, the antagonist against the argument. So the relationship formed by these two characters is the main relationship in the play. The relationship between the protagonist and antagonist is purposefully written to be the center of the dramatic action. Now, it is not in all plays that you can easily find a clear protagonist and a clear antagonist and all that. You can just identify relationships. You have to identify the relationship. How are these characters related to each other? What does this one want? How is this one standing in his or her way? The protagonist and antagonist contact with other characters can be considered secondary relationships. And so secondary relationships exist primarily to add force and clarity to the main relationship. And in A Doll's House, you can see that the main relationship is between Nora and Torvald. And so you have the secondary relationship coming in to add, clarity to the main relationship. The relationship between Nora and Helma has existed the way it was for a long time. But the appearance of Krogstad brought it to the fore, where she finally realized her place within her home. And so character and idea are a very single entity, mutual embodiment of the play's special world. And so whatever the characters do is very much linked to the idea of the play itself. And so within Six Characters in Search of an Author, for instance, you find so many relationships amongst the characters themselves. You have the father, the mother, the stepdaughter, the son, the step brother and sister, and all that. And then you have the relationship between and amongst the theater company members also. You have the manager and his actors, and then you have the machinists and all that. They also form another level of relationship. But the central point of the drama is that of the father and the stepdaughter and what happens between them in Madame Pache's parlor. Now, the puzzle of a character. When you look at these 8 areas of character profiling, they are like layers. They are like layers, and they all come together to give you a complete picture of a character. It helps to analyze them one after the other to get the whole picture. So you can extract information about any character of interest using the 8 points to get a character profile. When you're reading a play, you need to find evidence. You have to look for descriptive information from the playwright. List everything a character says about him or herself. List what other characters say about him or her. List the character's actions and behavior. And then 2, look at the key dimensions: physical, age, sex, build, race, health. 2, social, class, status, relationships, job, education, religion, spirituality. 3. The psychological, desires, needs, conflicts, willpower, personality, qualities. 4. Moral, values, and the sense of where the character stands in terms of right and wrong behavior, good or bad, etc. May be described as honest, malicious, deceptive, self-righteous, etc. And then when you bring them all together, they give you a clean profile of the particular character you are analyzing. I think to help you achieve this, I think you should do a one-page collage of words for a main character in any of the plays you have read so far, using the 4 key dimensions, which are the physical, social, psychological, and moral. So when you're done, I would like to share a few. I mean, when you're able to do it, you can send it to me. I'll create a forum where you can submit, or an assignment area where you can submit this visual exercise on character. Then I'll share a few with the class just so we get to see what you have done. I'll see you in the next lecture. Bye.